spots it feels reasonably warm, top temperature 19 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Are you all right? Belting. Hey, what about... I mean, I understand he's in Blackpool, so... Well, he's over that way, on the coast. So he's not bothered about Manchester. Why would he be? He's not meant to be. That's fine. Let him keep swimming in the sea. It'll do him good. But he's saying that there's too much money spent on terrorism, as it were, preventing terrorism in Manchester. Do you know, he's got a point. He's got a point. An awful lot of police resources are now spent in preventing terrorism in Manchester. And I'm not sure that every penny's worth it, and I'm not sure that the work they then do preventing terrorism is as precious to us, as valuable to us, as the work they'd be doing otherwise, like patrolling the streets and looking after us all on a day-to-day basis. I'm not sure that terrorism isn't the latest big bogey that we're all being told to fear. Sometimes, and I say this just before possibly somebody blows me up, but sometimes the best thing to do with terrorism is ignore it. I know that's hard when you're burying the dead, but terror, that's the whole point, isn't it? That's the whole point. A couple of attacks in London, a couple of attacks in the United States of America, an awful lot of palaver about attacks that would have happened had the police not intervened, and then we've got compensation being paid to people they shot whilst arresting and still turned out to be innocent. And you just think, hang on a minute, whoa, hang on a minute, what's going on here? What's going on? Well, first of all, we're arresting people and accidentally shooting them in the process, and it wasn't them, they weren't guilty, they hadn't done it. And then we say, if I may, do you remember the old biblical story? It's one of my favourite Jesus parables from the New Testament. And his mates drag this disabled bloke to Jesus and say, go on, then cure him. Go on, you reckon you're a curer? Cure him. And he says, my son, your sins, they are forgiven you. Because he talked like that, Jesus. He got his sentences all back to front. And he said, my son, your sins, they are forgiven you. And his mates went, what's that? That's bugger all, innit? What's going on here? Sins they are... I could have said that. I could have said that, for crying out loud. What are you on, man? You're supposed to be the big cheese. Walking on water. All that bread and fish. We had bloody weeks of eating bread and fish because of you, and you say, my son, your sins, they are forgiven you. Well, you're not exactly much of a soothsayer, are you? Come on, we want more than that. And he said, oh, for crying out loud. Because he didn't say for God's sake, because, well, he wouldn't, he was. And he said, for crying out loud, will you? All right, arise, take up thy bed and walk. Now, the bloke said, that's fair enough. Up he stood, picked up his bed, it can't have been that heavy, I think it was called a litter, picked it up and off he went. Well, it's a bit like that with terrorism and the cops, isn't it? Oh, we prevented this, we prevented that, we prevented this. It's always the ones that go off they don't present.
Life and laughs with Eamon and Jimmy.
We're talking about Ventax.
What about Roddo and Emu?
Oh, I love that. I love that.
There's people out there and these puppets, there's people doing time. What are you getting paid for?
Eamon and Jimmy.
The worst Ventax I've ever seen was Edgar Bergen, and he had a dummy called Charlie McCarthy. His mouth moved so much he was voted ventriloquist of the year by the American Lip Reading Society.
If your radio sounds funny on Sunday morning, you must be listening to Eamon O'Neill and Jimmy Wagg.
To be honest, we're bobbins.
Sunday morning from 9.
At BBC Radio Manchester.
Let's get on. 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And you can text, of course, you can always text 07786 206 951. Let's start in Pendlebury today. Cyril, how are you doing, mate?
Hello, I'm fine, thanks.
Good, what can we do for you?
Well, some might say that life starts way after 46. But me and my wife Lila have been married with children of 6 and 3. We're both 52, and she's lecturing still, and we're still very happy. And we still go let out down the pub now and again. I mean, we don't need like a rock and roll lifestyle to live, you know, like cigarettes and alcohol and all that. We'll go away tonight, chill out, sing, and no one lives forever, so you just got to live with what you got.
Well, that's the truth of it, isn't it? The age, the best age to be should always be the age you are.
Very true.
Because you have no control over it. You might as well grab everything that's going and give everything you can afford to give in the time that you are.
What's God's master plan?
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly that's the way forward for me.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Today's a cracking day. We'll have a go at having a belter tomorrow. Good on you. All right,
Thank
mate. Good on you. Thank you very much. Cyril says 46. There's been a survey. There's always a flaming survey, isn't there? There's been a survey, and the survey says 46 is the best time ever. You heard Heather talking about it. She can just about remember 46. God, she'd be in here. I don't think she's gone home yet. Hang on. I withdraw that until she's gone home. Anyway, yeah, scared. There's nothing wrong with scared. I've stayed alive many a time out of being scared. Anyway, Heather can just about remember 46, and she thinks it was, all right. Yeah, it was pretty good, 46. But apparently, according to Cyril, 52's no great shakes. Indeed, 52 is exactly great shakes. I got that wrong. 52 is belting. Absolutely belting, he says. Well, I can tell you on fairly reasonable authority that 59's not that bad. Every now and then you get a glimpse of a bloke in a big black hood carrying a scythe. But you do, sometime, and not always when you're asleep, you do get a glance every now and then, but you think, well, it's okay, he's all right, he's not fully formed yet, I'll be all right for another week or two. Yes. So you just got to just clutch it and run steady. That's what you have to do with life. Clutch it and run. Now to be done. Now to be done better. And after all the farrago about the not allowed in the royal enclosure, this is ladies, not allowed in the royal enclosure without knickers, well, Judith Chalmers, or Charms as she'll always be known from now on, Judith Chalmers says that there was one item she never bothered to pack. You guessed it, knickers. Yeah, in more than 30 years travelling the world for Wish You Were Here, she proudly packed light. But only now is presenter Judith Chalmers admitting how light. Yesterday she explained that she never wore underwear in 3 decades of foreign assignments for the ITV travel show. The 72-year-old said she went commando because she didn't want the outline of her knickers showing through her holiday outfits. I know, I'm off my tea as well. I think I might just have to stop now and go and feel unwell. Anyway, good on her. Good on her. What are knickers for anyway? Does anyone know how we got round to it? I know why blokes wear them. It's to keep everything in place, you know, the lower stacker, knacker stacker. I know why we've got them, but why do women bother? I mean, there's not a lot happens round there, is there? You know, it just sort of lies there doing nothing. But fellas, you have to be wary. You know, you go for a little jog, and, well, you don't need any more knowledge than that. It's like watching 2 ferrets wrestle in a bag. Very, very small ferrets, I'll grant you. So you have to keep it. You have to put... Even tailors used to ask what side you wanted it. They didn't put it like that. I believe they said, because I've never been to a tailor in my life, but I believe they said, what side does Sir dress? I think was the code. Yes, yes, quite. But yeah, there are so many answers, aren't there? Really, but so that's why blokes wear them. I think I've got back to it. That's why blokes wear them. I can't understand why women wear them. Unless they go up a lot of stairs, obviously. I mean, a women window cleaner. I was going to say a female window cleaner, but I don't think windows have gender. A women window cleaner or of that ilk, well, yes, you can understand. Yeah. Or bus conductress, nurses, all that. But, oh, dear me, otherwise, why bother? Anyway, Judith Chalmers didn't. That's the gist. I know her cousin. Dave. Yeah, he's all right. He's good fun. I've seen him without him and all, and it's not pretty. Well, we used to be members of the same gym. I've had to move on because of these strange hours I work. Oh, here we go. I listened to your diatribe against the white farmers of Zimbabwe yesterday and thought, oh, God. You believe that white men shouldn't be allowed to live in Africa, yet as many blacks as or whatever can come here. That is hypocritical beyond belief. It's fundamentally cultural Marxism. I don't know if it's a requirement to work for the BBC, but let me explain it first, so your listeners understand it. Cultural Marxism is a variety of Marxism. In my opinion, says Ted in Moston, the most evil ideology ever created. But instead of being applied to class, redistribution is applied to social groups. For example, the cultural Marxist believes that the white hetero or bisexual male is a minority repressing the majority, which of course is nonsense. All the white farmers in Zimbabwe, most of them were born in that country, which means they've as much right to live there as anyone else. Robert Mugabe's father was from Malawi, so if he claims to want to give southern Rhodesia back to the indigenous population, then he should pack his bags and leave. This is simply disguised anti-white racism on the part of ZANU-PF. That's Ted in Moston. Thank you always. Brian says, too much information. Too much information. Judith Chalmers without knickers. I may have nightmares now. Well, I'm only telling you what it says in the paper. That's my job. My job is to report some of the things that appear in the paper. And report I have. Don't blame me, blame the paper. What has someone blowing you up got to do with terrorism, Peter? Well, when I said blowing me up, Peter, I didn't just mean me. I didn't think they were going to single me out, although they've tried. No, I think... When I said that, I was thinking more in terms of there will be an explosion and I might be there to suffer it, rather than being the significant target. There's no point blowing me up. Changes nothing. Nobody will care anyway. I'm not reading that out. Call yourself a producer. What? I've just been sent from Billy. Thank you, Billy. Yeah. Thank you, yeah. No, I'm not. No. The line, as it were, the knicker line is somewhere other than there, but thank you anyway. 0161 228 2255. If there's something you want to say, you're more than welcome. Doesn't matter what it is, all you have to do is say it. You can email as well. It's radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk, and you can text, unless you're Billy, you can text on 07786 206 951. Sounds easy. And why people send me visual jokes, I'm not sure, but it's Keith, and there are lots of things we're not sure about him. But he sent me a number of logos. and they're all quite funny. I think the best one is a shop called Kids Exchange, but if you squint at it, it says Kid Sex Change. Exactly. That's the level to which it aspires. I assure you, that's as good as it gets. I'm not describing the others, but nonetheless, I am grateful. Thank you very much indeed. These days, they say that cats have 9 lives, and there's a cat called Freddy who's used up about 8 of his. Curiosity nearly killed Freddy when he climbed onto a 25-foot-high power line and spent the next 18 hours too scared to come down. He didn't want to fall, so he clung perilously to an earth wire with his head just inches from alive, which would have electrocuted him had he touched it, the RSPCA said. Passerby Terry Davis raised the alarm after spotting Freddy on Coltsford Clough in Amesbury, Wiltshire. Engineers from Southern Electric, aided by firefighters and the RSPCA, later rescued the tabby and white cat. Freddy, whose only injury was to his pride, then ran home with a note from the RSPCA attached to his collar. Your cat's had an adventure. Can you please contact us and let us know he's got home safely? There's nice, isn't it? What in the name of God are we doing using public resources, getting a cat down from something it climbed up? There is nothing that a cat's climbed up that it can't climb down. And the RSPCA, when you ring them and say, there's a cat in my tree, or there's a cat up the pylon, or there's a cat up the pole, should just say, fine, do nothing. It won't be there tomorrow. Well, it won't!
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
A North West MP's complaining that too much money's spent in Manchester on fighting terrorism. The Conservative MP for Lancaster and Wyre, Ben Wallace, says more money should be available for his county. Families in the Great Lever area of Bolton say they're still in shock after a suspicious fire killed a woman and left 3 others seriously injured. And cleaners at Manchester Airport are being balloted for strike action. The 200 workers involved are angry over a 2% pay deal. Manchester's weather cloudy with some bright spells later on. Highs of 19 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
If you're heading through Offerton on Marple Road on the A626, temporary traffic lights causing slight delays whilst resurfacing work takes place between Brookside Avenue and Hempshaw Lane. And in Knutsford, roadworks continue on the one-way system between Tatton Street, Mereheath Lane and Brook Street. So traffic will temporarily only be able to drive towards Tatton Park whilst the work's carried out. The diversion set takes you off via Canute Place, the A50 King Edward Road and Adams Hill. Don't forget, if you can update me further, do get in touch hands-free on 0161 244 4951. I'm Carla Banks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Peter in Hyde. Hi, Peter.
Hello, Alan.
What
I'm just, well, it is. This charge for coming into Manchester.
Congestion charge,
Yes.
yeah.
Now, has people ever thought, does Mr. Brown think the public are as daft as him? Because...
Go on.
I know it's going to make you laugh.
Tough one, that. Go
That
on.
is a good one. Now, he must think everybody lives in Prestwich, lunatic asylum. He only thinks this. Now, he's already had the tax money to pay for this, to release it for this metro system coming. Now, he's only going to lend them the money to these, or going to pay these contractors. They're going to make X millions of pounds out of it, and yet the motorists are going to pay for it. So it's not going to cost the government 1 cent.
Well,
Is it?
well, it depends on what you mean by cost the government, but
Well,
the...
when I say cost the government, Adam, excuse me, when I say cost, the taxpayers already paid this money. They've got this money.
Well,
right?
yeah, well,
Yeah, you know what I mean?
the government doesn't have any money.
Well, I know
the
they
government
don't.
has not one penny. It
No,
has
I know
no
it.
money.
No, I know this.
The only money it has is what it takes off you
Yeah.
and me in taxation via
Correct.
whatever sources.
Correct.
So you're right in saying that that money has already been collected to spend on things.
Correct.
Now, the government has decided that the £3 billion to change, this is what we're promised, the £3 billion
Yes.
to improve public transport in Manchester,
Yeah.
it's decided it is more than it wants to pay.
Yes.
So what it's saying is we'll pay, the government, £1.5 billion of taxpayers' money for that,
Yes.
but you can go out and borrow the rest.
Yes.
And give him permission, because local authorities aren't allowed to borrow money without permission. They get permission to borrow the money. They borrow the money in the city or wherever. And yes, you are right. That debt will then be paid by by those who are travelling into Manchester and
Correct.
out again.
So it's going to cost them nothing.
Well,
Directly, is it?
well, even if they gave, if the government decided we're going to give £100 billion to Manchester,
Yeah.
it would cost the government nothing. The
That's
government,
correct.
but I don't know why you've only just realised this. It was always that way.
Yeah, no, I've just been sat here thinking of that.
I mean, the government's fighting 2 wars at the moment. It
And we're paying for it.
Didn't costing them a penny.
No,
That's
it's
the
not.
only money they have.
Yeah. I can understand that. No, but I just sit here thinking of that. Does Mr. Brown think everybody's daft in this country? I thought...
Well, no, but...
No, but you understand how I mean,
The trouble is they have a limited amount
Yes,
of money.
I understand that.
It's a very, very high number,
Yeah.
but they have a limited amount of money.
Yeah.
And what we pay the politicians for is, A, to collect the least possible,
Yes.
and B, to spend it wisely. Now, you and me will have entirely different views on what spending it wisely is,
Yeah.
and whether they're collecting too much or too little, but that's their job.
Somebody's going to live in a nice big palace at the end of the day, aren't they? Somebody's going to have a nice big house.
I don't know to whom you're referring. I mean,
No, not
someone is definitely going to live in a palace. I mean,
Yeah.
Her Majesty lives in one presently.
Yeah, but somebody's going to live in a nice big house.
Who do you have in mind?
Oh, I don't know, because these politicians, to me, they're only puppets because they've no power, have they? there's no problem.
Well, they have absolute power. That's the strange thing.
A little bit, yeah. But if they want to pass anything, they have to go to the House of Lords and the House of Commons, haven't they? In one respect.
Well, they have to convince the majority of each other, in terms of the politicians, that's what they want. We have this ludicrous idea that it's very nearly a democracy. They have to convince each other.
Yeah.
But they can get it through the House of Lords without any problem at all. Because if the Lords reject something that the Commons votes for, the Commons can force it through.
It's true. And there's nothing of that effect that ever could bear on the air.
Yeah, please do.
This recycling. Right. Now, people have said, the government said, you recycle your bottles, you recycle your cardboard, you recycle this, you recycle that. And they sell it. Has your community charge gone down? Because mine's gone up 5%. So where's all this money going from that? Why don't they...
Well, they might say that without recycling it would have gone up 10%.
Yeah, but why don't they turn around and say, if you buy a load of, say, for instance, stuff from the supermarket and it's all in boxes, so it's cardboard.
Yes.
So why can't they say, OK, then, we'll buy it off the household and we'll sell it, so you're getting a bit back, the council's getting a bit back.
Well, just by way of throwing a spanner in your works, cardboard or otherwise, what money would they use to buy it off the household? Where would they get that money from?
I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, off the household.
Yeah, there must be bunks somewhere.
So if the government or local government bought the rubbish off you, they'd have to use your money to buy it.
Correct.
Because they don't have any other.
No, I say that. But, that's just a point I was just fetching about this community charge, this congestion charge. I think, do they think the public's balmy?
Well...
Because in one manner of speaking, it's just a big circle, isn't it? It's just circle with them.
It is indeed a vicious circle, but I don't know how vicious it is, but it's certainly such a thing. Well, you may get your say, Peter, thank you very much. You may get your say on whether the congestion charge comes in. If you were listening to Sir Howard Bernstein this morning on BBC Radio Manchester with Eamon and Diane, he said that the congestion charge, if the overwhelming majority... Well, I can't remember his exact words, so I won't quote them, but he effectively said if the majority of people in Manchester and the business of Manchester say they don't want the congestion charge, he couldn't see a situation where it would go forward. He went on to say that he thought, actually, given the opportunity, people would say, yes, let's have it. Well, BBC... Sorry, not BBC, sorry. There was a Freudian slip. The local authority, which is, of course, our local authority, there are 10 of, but the one in Manchester, so that's Manchester City Council, from where Sir Howard Bernstein came this morning, is the chief executive thereof. But Sir Richard Leese, who's the council leader, what you might call the political leader, he says, and I quote from their website, "I'm prepared to back a Greater Manchester-wide referendum on TIF." That's the name for what will eventually turn into the congestion charge. TIF is the process of getting the money. Don't worry about it. "I'm prepared to back a Greater Manchester-wide referendum on TIF after the consultant process has concluded." Remember, we were talking about the consultation process earlier in the week, and I said what I always say about consultation processes. They are simply a process by which the government invites you, or local government invites you, to have your say, but has absolutely no obligation to care a fig what you say. So you can say, I think it's crap, and they can say, thank you for your comment, and then go and do it. That's consultation. Well, they're now saying, certainly Sir Richard Leese, who, as well as being the leader of Greater Manchester City Council, is the deputy the deputy chairman of the Association of the Greater Manchester Passenger Transport Authority. Anyway, he is saying today that he would be prepared to back a Greater Manchester-wide referendum. Now, of course, there are other councils involved. It's not just Manchester City Council. In fact, they're one of the smallest. "I'm prepared to back a Greater Manchester-wide referendum on TIF after the consultation process has concluded, as long as all 10 councils in Greater Manchester agree in advance that they will be bound by the result." So that's just come in, that's the latest. Manchester City Council's leader, Sir Richard Leese, says he'll back a public vote on the congestion charge, but only if the 10 councils involved, including his, agree in advance that they'll be bound by the result. So if the overall referendum says no, you don't get it. If the overall referendum says yes, it goes in, and nobody ducks out. At the moment, any one of the 10 councils could say, well, we're not supporting it, so sod off, we're not doing it. They could. And he's saying they ought to get together, at some point have a referendum, and then stand by the result. What do you say? Alan in Radcliffe, good morning to you.
OK, thank you.
What can we do for you? Alan? Hello, Alan.
Well, just to start off by saying, the guy that was on earlier saying, does Gordon Brown think we're daft? If that guy drives a car, you know, the mind boggles. If he doesn't understand how the system works in relation to the tax and the money, then how does he understand how the system works with regard to driving? But what I am ringing about, there was a piece on the BBC Breakfast this morning, and it showed a Lexus, like a large Lexus, and apparently the woman driver had put it into drive rather than reverse, and it had mounted a Porsche, and it showed it with its offside front wheel, sort of perched, if not embedded, on the middle of the bonnet of this £45,000 Porsche.
Yeah.
And then there was a car at the side of that. And it was sort of presented with an element of humour, but from somebody in my position who sort of knows quite a bit about the casualties on the road, I say, well, hang on, you know, in the worst scenario, if that had been a mother and a couple of toddlers walking through the car park, you know, it could have been tragic. And there was a situation, I think it was last year in Farnworth, where, you know, that precise situation happened where a guy reversed rather than drove forward. He mounted the pavement and he crushed this 2-year-old toddler who was coming out, I think it was the bakery, with his elder sister. You know, he wasn't walking on his own, he was in good hands, and the car reversed and crushed him against the window. And this is the situation we're looking at. So, you know, when I spoke to you last week, you accepted that I put a pretty good argument forward to say that, you know, if we're going to get better drivers and better cyclists, we can have youngsters taking a cycling efficiency to preempt.
Well, I don't think I did say... I said it was a good idea. I don't know if I supported it, but it's a good idea, yes. But I don't...
Well, I'd like to go to the other end of it.
Well, wait 1 second.
Yeah,
even if we decided to adopt that policy, and even if we did everything that was possible to improve people's driving, it still would be funny to see two vehicles juxtapositioned in that way, providing in that particular incident nobody got hurt.
Right.
I mean, we've got to keep our sense of humour as well as our sense of safety, health and concern, haven't we? Without a sense of humour, we might as well all jack it in.
Well, I don't see that as being funny.
Well, I do lots of things.
Any more than I see Jeremy Clarkson being funny when he shoots.
Fine,
but, you know, when he starts...
But Alan, there is nobody on earth who says anything that everybody thinks is funny. Some people think it's funny, some people think it's not.
I accept we've got...
But we can't all be miserable beggars just because there's horrible things in the world.
I accept that, but at the end of the day, here's a situation that we can identify. There's two sides to the coin, and all I'm saying is there's a way forward. Now, we started at the one end, and I'd like to go to the other end by saying, when I served my time as a welder, it took me 5 years to become a qualified welder. But even then, if I wanted to progress, I became a coded welder, and that allowed me to weld like steam pipes and oil pipes and the like. But I couldn't do that on like the basis that I was a qualified welder. I had to take insurance tests. So what I'm saying is that when people take a driving test, they should maybe get 5 years to say, right, 5 years, and you've got to become an advanced driver. And if you can't become an advanced driver, then you can't drive big, powerful cars, and you name it. So it's like a progressive learning curve, isn't it? Just like it would be with an apprenticeship, which we don't have these days. But in the past, when we had apprenticeships, whether it be a joiner or a plumber or an engineer, you name it, we went through 5 years of training.
Well, there's a couple of things that spring to mind there, and I started an apprenticeship. My first job was as an apprentice electrician, and I would have been an apprentice for 5 years in the old indentured system.
And then you got your indentures and all the time.
Well, you were indentured as an apprentice. You got your indentures back, if I remember correctly, once you qualified. But no matter. But there were still crap electricians about. There were still crap joiners about.
They didn't get a job.
And there were still, well, some of them did. In today's age, Alan, they'd get a bloody job.
They won't get found out, would they? Well, if we're going to go forward, we've got to go back. Do you not think so? if the roads are better, we don't only make them safer, we reduce congestion and we reduce our carbon footprint.
Well, the trouble is, if you put it down to 5 years, if you say for 5 years, then frankly it has not one iota of merit. And I'll tell you why it has no iota of merit. Because they might not drive for that 5 years. So what are you going to say?
Right,
5 years, you learn nothing.
Right,
you learn nothing sat on the bus.
That's a loophole, and this is where...
It's not a loophole.
This is where Nick Freeman steps in and protects them, but get rid of the loophole.
No, it's not... Alan, it's not a loophole. If you say that a person, once he's passed his test, for 5 years, is only allowed to drive vehicles up to a certain power, well, first of all, we've got a difficulty how we frame legislation about the power of a vehicle. Is it the cubic capacity? Or is it, for example, I can think of some small vehicles that go bloody quick, thank you very much.
Well,
or do you mean large vehicles?
Well, whatever.
Well, what do you mean, whatever? You're writing the law here, Alan.
He's just passed 2,000 and odd laws.
Alan.
Yeah, go on.
You can sidestep as much as you like. I'm putting sensible questions to you to test your proposal. I may at the end of your answers, I may at the end of your answers think you've come up with a cracking idea.
Right.
But I can't know that unless you've addressed the things that are relevant.
Well, I'm trying, but in the given time, I can only say so much.
Well, I'll ask you a question and I'll give you as long as you want to answer it. Here is the question. It's quite a long question, but you said that a person should pass their driving test and not be allowed to drive vehicles of a certain size for 5 years thereafter.
Right.
Because, that was your posit, because they would be much more experienced by that time.
Only if they drive.
Oh, you didn't say that. You've just added that. Now, how much driving do you think? Only if they drive. What do you mean? How many miles a week?
Well, let's determine it.
Well, let us indeed.
A pilot has to do so many flying hours before he can progress.
A pilot, Alan, there is a slight difficulty.
Of course there's a difference.
I'll tell you what the difference is. It's not just the sky and the wheels.
If an aeroplane comes out the sky...
No, Alan, listen to the... No, I'm not bothered about what might happen. The difference is this. A pilot has to log every single flight. He has to. Yeah. So someone can come along and say, oh, yes, you flew to Bordeaux, you flew to Chester, we didn't land because there's no airport. You flew there, you flew there, you flew there. With a driver, we've no idea whether they're driving or not. How do we know?
The black box, the technology.
How do we know who's in there? We know the wheels are going round. How do we know who's sat at the other wheel, the one by the chair?
All right, I can't win. We'll still...
You can't win. It's knackered, Alan. Dave in Ratcliffe. Hiya, Dave.
Hello.
Hello.
Hang on a minute.
I'm hanging on.
I'd like to answer this, Alan that's just phoned up.
Go on.
There's certain things that he keeps saying. I live in Ratcliffe, mate, and there's certain things he keeps saying. He comes from Ratcliffe. He's on about bike riders and this, that and the other. I've actually seen him riding along the pavement. He shoots his mouth off. He doesn't know what he's talking about. There's accidents happened in Ratcliffe where... all he sees, he's got blinkers on. All he sees is like a one-track. People shouldn't drive. It's all, I'm a cyclist. It's all for me and whatever. There's actually accidents that's happened in Ratcliffe. The people that have actually caused the accidents are the pedestrian. There's actually a big thing about the school that was knocked down near some Pelican Crossing.
Dave,
listen, Alan.
No, I'm not going to listen to you. Listen, Dave, I'll tell you. Dave, just a minute. I'm not going to let you attack another caller. You can attack his ideas, but not him. So, what I am going to let you do, by all means, is address what he said. And what Alan has said on this programme on 2 different occasions that I recall, including the one just now, he is looking hard at how we might improve the standard of driving. Now, you're not telling me that's a bad motive.
It's not a bad motive, Alan. It's not a bad motive at all, but it's the way he goes on about things. It's a one-track thing with him. You know, he's got it into his head that, or the idea into his head that all motorists are bad people. That's the only trouble.
I don't think he has. I mean, well, from what I've heard him say... well, I don't care about the paper. I don't read it. What I do know is what he said on here... because I can control, to a certain extent, what people say rather more than a newspaper who merely have to print what he's written. But what I'm saying is, when he's on here, all he's ever done is put ideas forward to try to improve the standard of driving. And frankly, Dave, I think the standard of driving in this country is abominable and needs improving. Have you any ideas how to improve it?
Well, one of the ideas that I have really is people with L plates on when they first pass the test or before they've passed the test is take them on a motorway or take them on something that looks like a motorway, like the Rottenstall bypass, that they can go on with L plates because it isn't classed as a motorway, and teach them. My lads, when they passed the test, both of them have passed the test, and what they did was they had extra lessons after they'd passed the test.
Yeah, all the schools offer that, yeah.
Plus they got cheaper insurance. But this was when it first started. This was years ago. And I think they've been absolutely great idea. It's a great idea. And they've done absolutely well. They've not wrapped the cars up or smashed them at once.
Well, I agree with you. You see, there you are. We can get a sensible thing in the end. Your idea is that we make it compulsory, that people have lessons on the motorway either just before they take the test or, alternatively, without having to change the law, just after. Perfectly sensible idea, Dave. Good on you.
Fine.
Have a good day, mate. 0161 228 2255. What do you say? How do we improve the standard of driving in the United Kingdom? One question I know you won't answer, because it's not possible to answer, because it can't actually be done. How do you make the driving in the UK worse?
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline News.
Manchester City Council's leader, Richard Leese, says he'll back a public vote on the congestion charge, but only if all 10 councils in Greater Manchester agree that they'll be bound by the result. Police believe a fire which killed a grandmother in her own home in Bolton started in a wheelie bin at their front door. At this stage, there's no evidence of any accelerants being used. And cleaners at Manchester Airport are being balloted for strike action. The 200 workers involved are angry over a 2% pay deal. Manchester's weather cloudy with some bright spells later on. Highs of 19 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
In Sale, Carrington Lane is still slightly delayed because of these temporary traffic lights around Manor Avenue whilst gas maintenance work takes place. Various restrictions in operation, so again, do watch out for delays on the approach to that junction. In Offerton, Marple Road on the A626 still has those temporary traffic lights in operation along that stretch between Brookside Avenue and Hempshire Lane, again causing slight delays through the area. And on Key Street in Manchester, you'll notice water maintenance works being carried out between Key Street and Water Street, just outside Granada Studios. The diversion for the meantime takes you off via the A34 onto New Key Street and Water Street. Don't forget, of course, if you can update me further, get in touch by dialing hands-free 0161 244 4951. I'm Carl Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester. Sports with Will Perry.
We'll start with the cricket. Cover your ears, England fans. They've lost 4 wickets in the first 22 overs after making a decent start to the 4th one-day international with New Zealand at the Oval. The visitors won the toss and decided to bowl, and they struck early. Luke Wright and Kevin Peterson, the men to go in quick succession. Ian Bell was past fit. He went for 46, and captain Paul Collingwood was the last man to go for just 14. So the damage is England 116 for 4 in the 26th over. Well, let's hope it's better news for Lancashire this evening. The day started well for them with news that Andrew Flintoff is expected to bowl for the 2020 Cup match with Nottinghamshire Outlaws at Old Trafford. The England all-rounder was already made his first-team comeback, but he's yet to bowl an over since being out for 6 weeks with a side strain. Lancs cricket manager Mike Watkinson says competition for places should be the key to success.
We've got some very good players who've been sat on the side with Gary Keady and Dominic Cork, so the competition for places is fierce, and it's also a good message that young players playing well keep the place in the side. We want a balanced side based on performance and potential to win the game.
Well, Lancashire can potentially go top of the North Division table if Durham slip up at Derbyshire. We'll have ball-by-ball commentary here from 6 p.m. online at bbc.co.uk/Manchester. The government is set to ban Zimbabwe's cricket team from touring England next year on moral grounds. Culture Secretary Andy Burnham has handed a letter to the England and Wales Cricket Board today, making clear Prime Minister Gordon Brown's stance. And we've just had news that the England and Wales Cricket Board have announced that they're suspending all bilateral arrangements with Zimbabwe cricket, and they're looking to find a replacement touring team for the summer 2009. At Wimbledon, third seed Novak Djokovic will be in the spotlight on day 3 when he takes on former world number 1 Marat Safin. Defending champion Roger Federer plays Robin Sodling in the third match on centre, and women's top seed Anna Ivanovic plays Natalie Deci first on court 1. Leighton Hewitt, Serena Williams and Britain's Elena Baltasha are also in action today. Baltasha has lost the first set to Ji Zheng of China 6-2. Turkey faces the prospect of having just 13 outfield players available for tonight's Euro 2008 semi-final against Germany in Basel. Goalkeeper Volkan Demirel will miss out after the 2-match ban was upheld for his red card against the Czech Republic. And Emre, who's got a hamstring, he's also out. Coach Terim said he may have to field a third-choice goalkeeper, Tolgan Zenigin, because of the injury crisis. 2 of Manchester City's backroom staff have left the club as manager Mark Hughes reorganises his backroom team. Reserve team coach Ian Miller and fitness and conditioning coach Stefano Morone have gone with immediate effect. Former Bury boss Chris Casper has been appointed youth team manager at Bradford City. Casper was sacked by the Shakers back in January after a poor run of results. In Rugby League, Mick Hogan is the new chief executive at Wigan Warriors. He's part of the new management board at the JJB. And Oldham Ruffians winger Gareth Langley has been suspended for 1 game and fined £75 by the Rugby League Disciplinary Committee. That's for a careless high tackle on Hunslet's Luke Rayner in June. He'll miss the top of the table National League 2 clash with Gateshead on Sunday.
Your Sunday Morning Lion with Mike Shaft.
Where are we at the moment as a nation?
We do need to know a lot more about getting representation from all diverse groups. But until people begin to realise that diversity is about all of us, rather than us and them, it will always be a, quote, minority issue.
Mike Shaft.
What is it all about?
Well, Micah Challenge is a long-term commitment of the Christian community worldwide, really, to hold governments to account to deliver on the Millennium Development Goals, so that it's not just a series of aid promises.
Manchester's faith, spirit and life's difficult questions with Mike Shaft.
What is it?
Sunday morning from 7 on BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. 0161 228 2255 to talk via us to Manchester. You can do it also via email at radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk, and you can text us on 07786206951. Will it ever go away? The congestion charge is back in the news because 2 things. One, of course, we had Sir Howard Bernstein, the Chief Executive of Manchester City Council, in the studios this morning with Eamon and Diane. And he said that it was unlikely that the congestion charge would go ahead if the majority of people in the area were against it. The majority of people and businesses in the area were against it. And Sir Richard Leese this morning, in fact just about 10 minutes ago, has said that he would be prepared to support a referendum after the consultation period, a referendum amongst the people of Greater Manchester, providing everyone, that's the other 9 and his, every one of the local authorities agreed that, and agreed in advance to be bound by the result. As you can imagine, our news team are ringing the leaders of other councils at the moment, and so far we've got the leader of Wigan Council, Lord Peter Smith, or Lord Smith of Lee, Peter Smith anyway, saying effectively no comment. There is a meeting taking place, I'm told, this coming Friday, day after tomorrow, and no doubt things will be discussed there. We'll bring you the details of that, if not, because we don't know what time the meeting is, if not with me, then certainly with Steve Saul at 5 o'clock on Manchester Now. But the news team are across it. I'll let you know. If any other leaders make any comment, I will, of course, let you know. Is a referendum? People were calling for a referendum. Are you now happy? Is that the way forward? Doesn't mean you're going to get one, by the way, but certainly the chances have just increased. That's all we can say. Whether referenda is the way to make the world work, I don't really know. You tell me. 0161 228 2255. And on a story we covered yesterday, but is all over the papers today, during Prime Minister's questions in the House of Commons, Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, told MPs the government would, and I quote, bring forward this week immediate legislation to enable the courts to grant anonymity to witnesses for cases such as those involving organised crime and witness intimidation. I hope and believe we can do this with all party support. Remember yesterday, on Wednesday last week, the appeal court, the Lords, the House of Lords, the legal bit of the House of Lords, decided that in criminal cases, the defendant was entitled to see and know who is accuser was, and indeed was entitled to challenge their evidence and the reasons that they might be giving that evidence. But in a few cases in recent years, up to about 50 according to some newspapers, in a few cases in recent years, people have been sent down, criminals have been sent down on the evidence of people who they knew not or who they weren't able to point to and say, you're saying that because I was sleeping with your daughter, or whatever the reason might be. So there was no way that they could challenge that evidence. The kind of people who are involved are fairly evil people, but we have a system of justice. Well, the Prime Minister has now said they will bring forward a situation where the courts will enable the courts to grant anonymity. The problem with that is that if a witness is reluctant, the witness is not going to allow him or herself to be put forward as a witness if he's got to wait until it gets to court to find out whether he'll be granted anonymity or not, because by the time it gets to court, his anonymity is out of the window and his life may well be in danger. Thomas in Altrincham. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, Alan.
What have you got?
Just about the driving element you're speaking about.
Go on.
I agree with what with yourself. The standard of driving in this country, absolutely shocking.
It is.
And I thought that the few things, the way to get, well, maybe improve it, may not work, who knows, is to maybe bring in every, say, 10 years... sorry, are you still there, Al?
Yeah.
Sorry, every 10 years, make people resit the driving test. And when you get over a certain age, maybe 60, 55, 60, make it every 5 years. I've lost count of the times I've been on in a situation where the car in front, a brand new 4x4 or a brand new Jag, and they don't seem to build indicators on these new cars. On a lot of cars.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You know, again, what on earth makes them decide not to indicate?
I've never been able to answer that. No.
So, you know, maybe more to pass your test at 18 and to have that license, so long as you don't lose it through points accumulated.
Yeah.
To have that license for life, it's not that it doesn't work. It's proven not to work because of the situation we're in now. So you have to have a situation where the test is resitted or resit at such points through their driving life, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah, but that's not what it's about, on it. I mean, it doesn't bother me that it hits their pocket, because it's going to hit my pocket as well. But it might make the road safer, but it might not. Well, you know, it seems a logical argument to me. I mean, some of the old people that see driving, I'm convinced in my mind that if you sat an old person down and said, what's the speed limit for a dual carriageway, unrestricted, I'm sure they'd say 40, because a lot of them drive at that.
Well, why is that bad?
Well, I think you can drive it in certain... I mean, if it's just take it a step further, in certain other countries, you can actually get fined for driving below a certain speed.
Well, there is a sign in the highway code that tells you that you're not allowed to travel at less than a minimum speed. There is a sign for a minimum speed limit. We went on a search once, just a radio search. We didn't actually move out the studio, but we went on a search trying to find where one existed. And yes, there are places, I can't remember where they were, but there weren't many. But frankly, if somebody's doing 40 miles an hour on a dual carriageway, why does that matter? All you've got to do to not run into him is to be doing 40 or less behind him.
Yeah, we'll take that argument a bit further.
Please
doing
do.
50, doing 20 on a 30 zone. It doesn't just stop at doing 40 on an unrestricted dual carriageway. You often find that same person who'll be 25.
But what I can't fathom.
It creates frustration, I think, Alan.
Well, frustration, yes, okay, but I don't know. I mean, what we need to be dealing with there is the person who thinks that the speed he wants to travel at is the right one. Now, whether that is one that is permitted or not permitted is irrelevant. The speed you travel at is the same or less than the car in front, whatever the speed limit is.
Oh, absolutely. But the situation is, if they drove like that on a test standard, they wouldn't get through the test because they would be seen as not making progress. And the driving examiner would say to them, if everybody drove like that, which it'll take us about 4 days to get to Blackpool.
But the reason they have that element of the driving test isn't because they want everybody to hurry up, but because they are entitled on the driving test to think that if the person isn't going at a faster speed than, so isn't going at, say, 29 in a 30 limit, the person isn't going that speed, not because he just likes going slow, but because he's not competent at that speed. And if that is a possible outcome of the thought, then you fail him. But once he's passed his test, he's established that he can drive at 30 mile an hour and 40, because they go on 40 mile per hour roads as well. I think these days they even sometimes go on 50, but never mind.
They go on 60 as well.
Well, I'm not going to stick my neck out too far, but what I am going to say is just because a person chooses to drive slowly, a qualified driver, that doesn't give us the right to say he or she is wrong.
Well, can I take that argument a little bit further on?
Yes, of course you can.
Well, you might as well go back and say, well, what's the point in indicating to that? I've proved I can do it on my driving test.
No, because...
So why should I bother now?
Because I need to know, as the other driver...
But why?
I'm going to tell you. I need to know, as the other driver, what your intentions are so that I can do what is necessary. So if you indicate that you're turning left, all right, I know that you're going to change speed quite soon, so I get advanced warning of it. But if you're driving along in a 60 mile per hour limit at 40 miles per hour, I can work that out for myself, because if you're doing 40 and I'm doing 50, I get closer to you.
Well,
I can work that out. I don't need an indication. Your presence is that. But I can't work out what's in your mind, what your next thought is going to be, whether it be to turn left or right. If your thought is to slow down, again, I can see that. I slow down.
I think you're an ex-driving instructor, aren't you? Yeah?
I am.
I think that you see, I know we've touched on this already, but on the driving examiner sheet, when you're driving at 30 in a 40 zone, if it's safe to do 40, they actually mark you for not making progress.
Yes, they do. And a few seconds ago, I explained why that is so. Because the driving examiner doesn't know you. All he knows is that you're in an area where you should be driving at 40, because that is the requirement of the test. He's taken you on that road particularly. You don't happen there by accident. He's taken you to that venue to see how you handle a vehicle at 39 mile an hour or 59 mile an hour, depending on the limit. And if you don't demonstrate that to him, he is not able, or she is not able, to say, yes, you can handle a vehicle at that speed, therefore we will pass you. He's got to say, I don't know whether you can handle a vehicle at that speed, so I'm not going to pass you. So the driving test is a test of all the things you can do to prove that you are able to do them. So you have to do them. Once you've passed your test, you're not compelled to do them any longer, and you drive at the speed within the confines of the law that you're comfortable with.
Well, that's true.
And if somebody drives faster and runs in the back of you, any insurance assessor will tell you that's their fault.
Yeah, true. But I think it's just the better people's driving generally. I think maybe there's got to be a reset situation, or certainly for the you know, I'm just convinced a lot of people don't know how to deal with roundabouts. You've seen so many.
I'm not going to argue with you there. I think it's just me and you, Thomas. Have a good day, mate. 0161 228 2255. If you've got something to say, well, that's absolutely fantastic. There's been an experiment in a town, and I've forgotten where it is. I'm sorry about that. They did it in Bristol about 40 years ago. I know. I think it was 40. Yeah, it was. It was about 40 years ago they did it in Bristol. But they've done it in another town. It was in the papers yesterday, and I've forgotten the town. But they've done away with all the street furniture. They've done away with all the road signs. They've done away with the halt signs, the give way signs, and all that caper. And the only rule, really, is the speed limit in that town is 30 miles per hour, full stop. There are no differences. The speed limit is 30 miles per hour. And at roundabouts, you always give way to the right, whether that thing approaching from the right is a bus, a car, a lorry, a pedestrian, a cyclist. At roundabouts, you give way to the right. And that is the end of it. How the experiment will go, I don't know, but so far it seems to be making traffic move more easily and more safely. Try it in Manchester? Yeah, right. That'll work.
Join me, Becky Want, this afternoon from 2, live from the Garden Market in Albert Square. BBC Radio Manchester.
Do you have something to say on driving standards, congestion charge, locking up people without bearing witness, or indeed anything else that bothers you? You know where we are, and I'm here for another hour.
95.1 FM, DAB Digital Radio, and the World Wide Web. This is Manchester. BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, could you get to vote on whether you want a congestion charge? And police reveal more details about a fatal fire in Bolton.
The England and Wales Cricket Board suspend next summer's tour with Zimbabwe.
The good news is that this afternoon should be drier with some sunny spells, just the odd shower, top temperatures of 19 Celsius.
And if you're travelling along the M60 at the moment, you should have a clear run ahead of you, all looking fairly clear on the cameras.
Good afternoon, I'm Faye Rusco. Manchester City Council's leader Richard Leese says he'll back a public vote on the congestion charge, but only if all 10 councils in Greater Manchester agree that they'll be bound by the result. In the past, he'd refused to say if he'd agree to a referendum on the controversial issue. Simon Ashley is the leader of the Liberal Democrats in Manchester.
He quite readily says that he doesn't like the idea, but this is the only way he thinks of keeping enough councils on board. So I think he's been forced into this position. I think he'd rather not be in this position, but I think he recognises too that if you don't give the people of Greater Manchester a voice and a chance to express their opinion, you're not going to have buy-in from all the other councils.
A North West MP's complaining that too much money's spent in Manchester on fighting terrorism. Government money's being used to fund moderate Muslim groups to fight extremism and also to boost anti-terrorism officers in the region. But the Conservative MP for Lancaster and Wyre, Ben Wallace, told the Commons that the strategy's flawed and more money should be available for his county.
We will see large parts of the money earmarked to expand some of the counter-terrorism branch functions of Prevent going into Manchester, much larger sums than are going into Lancashire. Now, if you look at the mapping of the Muslim communities within the North West, you would see that it is actually the wrong way round.
Police believe a fire which killed a grandmother in her own home started in a wheelie bin at the family's front door in Bolton. Alexia O'Connor has the very latest.
71-year-old Hamida Begum died in the blaze on Monday night in Great Lever. Her daughter and granddaughter was seriously injured and 3 firefighters are still in hospital. One has 50% burns. Police say they've now established that the fire started in a wheelie bin which had been put outside the house earlier in the day by the family. They also say there's no evidence that an accelerant had been used, but that they can't rule out the possibility that someone may have deliberately set fire to the bin. Police have denied that there's any link to a previous robbery at the family's jewellery shop.
The Prime Minister's told MPs that legislation will be brought forward next week to allow witnesses in some trials to continue to give evidence anonymously. A Law Lords ruling last week restricted the use of anonymous witnesses. It's thought dozens of cases across the country could have been affected. For instance, Greater Manchester Police had offered anonymity to any witnesses who came forward in the Jesse James murder case. Cleaners at Manchester Airport are being balloted for strike action. The 200 workers involved are angry over a 2% pay deal. The union Unite says the result of the ballot will be announced tomorrow. And can you help catch 3 robbers who terrified staff at a petrol station in Stockport earlier today? The men threatened cashiers at the Sainsbury's forecourt in Heald Green with handguns just after midnight. All 3 are described as Asian and were wearing dark-coloured clothes.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Will Perry.
The England and Wales Cricket Board have announced they're suspending all bilateral arrangements with Zimbabwe cricket on moral grounds and are looking to find a replacement touring team for summer 2009. Despite Zimbabwe being in political turmoil and economic crisis, its cricket team was scheduled to play 3 one-dayers in England next summer, as well as the ICC 2020 Championship. England have struggled to find the runs just before lunch in their 4th one-day international with New Zealand at the Oval. They lost 4 wickets in the the first 22 overs. Ian Bell has top scored with 46. England are now 137 for 4 after 31 overs. Well, there's better news for Lancashire. Andrew Flintoff is expected to bowl for the Lightning in the 2020 Cup match with Nottinghamshire Outlaws at Old Trafford tonight. He's already made his first team comeback, but is yet to bowl an over since being out for 6 weeks with a side strain. We'll have ball-by-ball commentary here from 6 p.m. and online at bbc.co.uk/Manchester. And it's semi-final time at Euro 2008. Germany take on Turkey in Bâle.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
The showers that we saw this morning are starting to die away, and they'll continue to move away as we go through this afternoon, so it will become increasingly dry and bright with some nice spells of sunshine and top temperatures of 19 Celsius.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Evelyn in Stockport says, "Well, I've heard it all now. You quite often mispronounce words when you're talking quickly, but what on earth is the United Condom?" I hope it's not a shared facility. And I would normally say, "Wash your ears out, you deaf old bint." However, that's about 5 emails I've had asking me what is the United Condom. I don't know what the United Condom is, other than a mispronunciation. More importantly, perhaps, I haven't a clue what I was trying to say at the time. I get so agitated and excited, I fall over myself, but I've no idea what I was trying to say when I said the United Condom. Suffice to say that I wasn't trying to say the United Condom, nor yet attempting some kind of, I don't know, money-saving idea. Dearie me, I don't feel well now. 0161 228 2255, Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk, and you can text, of course, 07786 206 951. Darren in Sale. Hiya, Darren.
Hi, how's it going?
Not bad, mate. Apart from the United Condom, it's going fine. I think I realised now I must have been trying to say United Kingdom, but I don't know, it sounds better. What have you got, mate?
Freudian slip there.
Indeed.
It's just on the congestion charge, really. I'd like to revisit that.
Yeah.
I'm usually quite an apathetic person when it comes to the political machinations of local or national government, but the proposed congestion charge has actually got me really incensed. The dent in the family finances that I'm seeing more and more often with the increase of whether it's fuel, food, council tax and various other taxes, this proposed congestion charge has really got my blood boiling, and it's I would say it's the final straw for me, and it's actually motivated me to vote, which is a first, because as I say, I'm normally quite apathetic when it comes to things like that.
What would you be voting against? Because you've convinced me already, Darren, you wouldn't be voting for in the case of a referendum. Would you be voting against the charge, or would...
Well, it depends how. I mean, a referendum is all well and good, and the problem with a referendum, I feel, would be how the question is phrased.
Inevitably so, but let us do it the simple way. If I say to you now, because I think the referendum, if there were such a thing, would be a fairly bland, basic question. Of course, what they do is preamble it in a way that encourages you to vote for it if they were with the idea. But let me try this on you. The congestion charge is presented to us as a process for raising half the money to spend £3,000 million improving public transport in Greater Manchester, a large extension to the Metrolink and other things too. Now, the question eventually will be, do you vote yea or nay? But prior to that, the two sides to the argument will be fighting tooth and nail, giving you every bit of information that enhances their argument. So you would be left with this question. £3 billion being sent on public transport to improve Manchester. You will need to pay a congestion charge. Would you vote for or would you vote against?
I would vote selfishly against it. as much as I'd like to see £3 billion spent on the public transport system in Manchester for improvements, selfishly, I would vote no. The reason being, my wife and young daughter, we moved out of the city centre to Sale, to what we thought was a suburb, but we now find ourselves within the clutches of the congestion charge. And should we want to do something as crazy as leave the Trafford Centre at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to go home having been at the cinema, we would be subject to a £2 charge because we would be crossing the M60, and that actually beggars belief. We have no intention of going to the city centre or anywhere near it, but and that is the thing with the congestion charge, with the information that I've got on it or that has been presented to me or that I've seen, is that the outer ring, as it's called, which is the M60, the £2 charge that would be levied to cross it at peak times, and also the peak time window from 7 a.m. till 9:30 a.m. Anyone that actually does travel to the city centre will know if you travel to the city centre at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's fairly dead. So they really are working hard to make sure that everyone gets every last penny taken from them. But as I say, more importantly, for people like myself who've no intention of going to the city centre, but we find ourselves having to cross the M60 to go to either the Trafford Centre or to the indoor ski slope or the gym or whatever. The people that live in Whitefield, should they want to go to the Tesco that's just inside the M60, are they also going to be subject?
There are indeed idiosyncrasies, aren't they, that need a coat of looking at, if nothing else. There's nothing wrong with voting selfishly whatsoever, and the congestion charge does one thing, and that is people like you who made the decision to move out of the city into the suburbs, and I take your point about Sale no longer being the suburbs, but let's be honest, there are parts of Sale that are. Sale has some very nice parts right now. I suppose the city centre does, but you know what I mean. So you make that decision. It's, in effect, a life-changing decision. But then somebody comes along and, if you like, changes the information on which that decision was made. And that always seems unfair. I'm not saying it is, but it always has that sensation of, hang on a minute, we've been shafted here. Had we known what we know now, we might not have moved.
For sure, definitely, and I'm sure I'm maybe not as quite as incensed as Peel Holdings, who are the landlords of the Trafford Centre, Chill Factor, JJB and David Lloyd and what have you. I'm sure they're a lot more incensed than me.
Dan, and all I can say to that is if ever you hear me suggesting in any way, shape or form that I have the slightest concern about what happens to Peel Holdings, you have my permission to beat me to death with a baseball bat.
No, for sure. But the people that certainly that work there and everything else, and how this affects them and all the rest of it, and how this outer ring has been decided, and how just crossing it to travel a few hundred metres inside it can be considered to be either adding to or alleviating congestion into the city centre is kind of beyond me. Having said that, I think that there is a congestion problem into the city centre itself, but again, it comes back to your question, is how the referendum question will be phrased, in that, do we want a congestion-free city centre, which, yes, we would like. But, again, selfishly, my wife, my daughter, me, we never go in the city centre anymore.
The other thing might be, do you want a congestion-free city centre? Yes, but not if it turns Sale into a car park for park and ride.
Exactly.
Or Atherton, where I live, into a car park for park and ride. You've got to think of those things as well. Good on you, Darren. Have a good day.
Thank
I've
you.
got nothing against Peel Holdings, but they are big enough and they're certainly ugly enough to look after themselves. They don't need me crying crocodile tears for them. Brian in Stockport, with you in a moment.
Mornings sound better with Eamon O'Neill and Diane Oxbury.
Eamon and Diane.
I will not pay full price for anything. I'm always looking for the cheapest thing. All tastes the same to me by the time I've cooked it. Whether it's value or whether it's finest, it all tastes the same.
Eamon and Diane and you.
I'd like to know who's done the costing, because every major project that we've done in England, they're always over budget, and who's going to be paying for the over budget? They never are correct. They always keep the way. Look at the Olympics. It's actually over 3 billion. I think it's something like 10 billion now at the moment, isn't it?
The station with Eamon and Diane for breakfast.
Just habit, that's what it is.
Back tomorrow morning from 6 at BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you, Alan. I was a witness to the murder of a young man last year who was kicked to death by 2 idiots. It took over a year to convict them. If I'd not been given a screen and a false name to use at court, then I'm sorry, but I wouldn't give evidence on the grounds of my own safety. That's a text from someone who, quite rightly, remains anonymous. You can still be anonymous on here. You don't have to go around the screen. We have to know who you are, but we don't tell anyone if you don't want us to. Brian in Stockport, hiya.
Hi, Alan.
What have you
Just
got?
a quickie.
Go on.
I mean, everybody's going on about the congestion charge. I mean, I'm retired now, so it doesn't affect me in one way, unless I go into the city centre, which is very, very rare. I think 1982 was the last time I was there, because I was on jury duty. But everybody that's coming down, I can only speak for the southern part of the ring, which is Stockport. Everybody coming from Macclesfield, Poynton and that way, if they're going to use the transport, where the hell are they going to park? And then me going down into Stockport, where am I going to park if they're going to park where I normally park? You know, everybody keeps talking about going in. Nobody talks about the outer ring, where all these people are going to go if they're going to use the transport.
Well, we were just saying much the same with Darren, because, yes, it would turn Sale, Stockport, Atherton, Oldham, all various parts. There would have to be, if we're going to use it in a park and ride kind of thing, then they're going to have to be great places, great huge car parks, aren't there, for people to park their cars?
I mean, you must have a knowledge of the A6 coming from Poynton through Hazel Grove and everywhere like that.
I've spent a day of my life on there. Go on.
Sorry?
I've spent a day of my life on there.
I was just going to say
going to
that.
Lime Park takes about 5 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
Go on anyway.
But, you know, people like my son, his hobby is his car. Now, if he goes across the M60 to go to Halfords, which is on Manchester Road, is he going to pay?
Well, at the moment, yes.
You know what I mean? So all those shops on the ring are going to lose out. Everybody keeps talking about the Trafford Centre, but there's other places as well that are built just inside.
But if your son is going to Halfords for X, doesn't matter what it is going for, and he thinks, well, I'm not going there until I have to go past anyway, he will instead, he won't go to Halfords and pay an extra possible £2 to go to Halfords and turn his spark plug a fiver or whatever they cost. I've no idea what they cost, but he won't turn his spark plug from a fiver to £7 because it makes no sense to do so.
Yeah.
So he will pick one up next time he's passing, which means that the environment has saved the exhaust fumes of that otherwise taken journey.
Yeah, but possibly we'll use another supplier that's outside.
He may use another supplier that's outside, so the argument about jobs and surviving businesses merely means that the ones outside the ring do a little bit better and the ones inside the ring do a little bit worse. Who cares?
Yeah, but eventually the Halfords are going to close.
And possibly they might simply move. They might just flit outside the ring.
Say. They're going to move outside
well, that's
the
fine.
ring.
That's fine. I mean, in the end, when, and I say when because I think it'll come in, referendum or not, when the congestion charge comes in, it will have an effect. Businesses will relocate.
Yeah.
Businesses are relocating all the time.
I understand that.
And for a period, there'll be a bit of moving hither and thither to take advantage or to remove a disadvantage. That's what will happen.
Yeah.
That always happens. We can't help that. And it's a small price to pay.
Going back to the question in the first place, where the hell are they all going to park?
Well,
if you want them to use the transport, they're going to stop at the outer ring and get on a park and ride or whatever you like to call it. But they've got to leave their car somewhere.
They have, and that's one of the things that needs a very serious look at, because that might be its death knell. If they're going to present us with a referendum, that's the thing they're going to have to resolve. Because I can imagine the people of Altrincham, the people of Oldham, and all the surrounding towns saying, hang on a minute, hang on. At the moment, the leaders of the outside, the one I always pick on, and it's a shame to do so. But the one I always pick on is Trafford.
Yeah.
I've met consecutive leaders of Trafford. I don't know the opinion of the current one.
Yeah.
But when I talk to leaders of Trafford Borough Council, they always say one of our problems is that we have this road going through the middle of our place, and there are people coming from outside through Trafford to Manchester, and then at night we have 25,000 people, 25,000 cars going from Manchester through Trafford outside. Yeah. And they get nothing for that from the ratepayer. Yeah. Nothing at all, because they pay the rates outside, and that's fine. If we now say, well, look, what we've got to do is we've got to build a bloody big car park in Trafford, well, two things. One, OK, they get a use for some land that they're not using presently, but if the council builds the car park, they get money off all those passengers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an advantage. Now, it turns Trafford, if you like, into a car park in certain areas, and that's not good. But do you know what I mean? It's not all bad.
Yeah,
if they suddenly...
it's not all bad, but there again, Stockport loses out again. We're not even on the list for the trams till year 2020 or whatever. I mean, years ago, we had the tram that came down the A6 right up to Hazel Grove. I mean, I'm talking years ago, 1950-odd when they stopped them. But now they're talking about bringing it through Didsbury, and it's only on one side of the town. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
whereas before it used to go right through the centre. But I still go back to the car parking problem, and it's going to be the same for everybody on the outside ring.
We shall see. Good on you, mate. Cheers, Brian. Have a good day. Have your say. 01612282255. You can talk about anything. The congestion charges rears its head again. If you're wondering why, well, Mark will now tell you.
BBC Radio Manchester. Headline News.
As promised, Manchester City Council's leader Sir Richard Leese says he'll back a public vote on the congestion charge, but only if all 10 councils in Greater Manchester agree they'll be bound by the result. Police believe a fire which killed a grandmother in her own home started in a wheelie bin at the front door. At this stage, there's no evidence of any what are described as accelerants being used in the incident in Bolton. And cleaners at Manchester Airport are being balloted for strike action. The 200 workers involved are angry over a 2% pay deal. Manchester's weather cloudy with some bright spells later on, highs of 19 Celsius. I'm Mark Edwardson.
Well, whoever set fire to that wheelie bin's for the high jump, dear God, if you put a tin can in it, you get about 4 years.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Well, I've just taken a quick look to the cameras on the M62 heading eastbound between junction 21 Mill Row and 22 Rishworth Moor heading Leeds bound, and traffic's built up there for the moment for some reason. Certainly had no reports of any accidents or incidents along that stretch, but if you do know otherwise, do get in touch. I'll give you that number shortly. Aside from that, generally it's been a fairly quiet afternoon. Traffic's been coping fairly well on the diversion because of these closures on London Road on the A6 between Whitworth Street and Ducey Street. Sewer works continue on the main route in and out of the city centre, and of course a number of bus services are also affected, so make sure that you check before you travel. Don't forget, if you can update me further, the number to dial hands-free is 0161 244 4951. I'm Carla Banks.
2020 traffic means you get an update every 20 minutes through the day.
Steve, via text in Manchester, I'm under the impression that the speed signs are the maximum you can drive at and are not saying you must travel at the said speed. So why should someone doing 40 when the maximum is 60 be an issue? I don't know the answer to that, Steve. I don't know. You don't have to travel at the speed you are permitted to travel at. James in Wigan. Hiya, James.
Hi, Alan.
What you got?
My girlfriend bought me a mobile phone for Christmas, and with the last couple of weeks it started not charging. You know, I had to maul about with the wire when I was putting it on charge.
Yeah.
So she took it back to Carphone Warehouse,
I'm going to have to stop you now. I've just stopped you for two reasons. The kid's screaming in the background, but you can't help that. But you've just named the company, and I can't carry on. It's not your fault, James. I say this every time. If you name companies, you go on to talk about a consumer problem, you're welcome to. It's not what we do anymore, but, you know, if you're welcome to, feel free. But if you come on to talk about one, you mustn't name the company for reasons I've gone into endlessly before. It's not your fault, James. Slip of the tongue, I know, but it means we can't do anything. If you leave it a week or so when we've all forgotten about it and ring us again and don't name the company, we'll carry on accordingly. 0161228 2255. If you want to join us, that's good, and we want you to. And Gordon says the best way of the best way of educating the public and Johnny Foreigner is to bring back the old public information adverts. Ah, yes. He says they worked very well and they're cheap to run. I'm not sure, Gordon. I think there was a problem about them because, first of all, the commercial television companies were understandably reluctant, quite rightly, reluctant to play them during peak times because that was time that they could sell for very, very high rates. I believe it's a substantial amount of money to advertise in that break in the middle of Coronation Street because there are 25 million people watching it. Of course it's expensive. So they said, well, we're not putting them on then unless the government wants to pay that kind of money. And what they used to do was put public information films, as well as putting them on ITV, they used to put them on the BBC. But of course, the BBC is not allowed to charge them for putting them on. And the public say, well, we don't want these. We don't want adverts. We listen to the BBC to avoid adverts. So it gets messy. But, yeah, they were cheap to run. Norman says the congestion charge. This morning, Eamon and Diane's guest was Sir Howard Bernstein. Well, it says here of GMPTE, but he's not. Sir Howard Bernstein is the Chief Executive of Manchester City Council, but don't worry. He made a number of comments, namely one, which I found a tad contradictory. He said that unlike London, which had implemented the very costly ANPR system, Manchester was opting for cheaper technology, which appears to be a tracking device attached somewhere in the vehicle to monitor traffic movements, management and the like, which was fair enough. Then a listener came on to inquire what happens to visitors. How will they be charged? Then Sir Howard said, oh, well, we'll use a backup system the same as the one they have in London, the ANPR. Talk about a half-baked plan. So in summary, Manchester are actually using both technologies to monitor transport movement. So the statement that we in Manchester are not using ANPR as it's too costly is absolute pap. Because, as he confirmed, Manchester will be using both technologies. I've got to say to you, Norman, that technology, when bought by authorities, is almost always crap. Neil in Altrincham. Hiya. Hello, Neil.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can now, yeah.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I was listening to the discussions you've had earlier on this afternoon, about driving and that in this country.
Standard of driving, yeah.
Yeah, I'm 54 this year, so I've been driving for a while, but I'd like to sort of I like to keep learning, keep up to date with things.
That's fair.
I did take my advanced motoring test back in '86, but things with the roads, as everything else, things change. I was going to say improve, but I won't. I'll say
settle for change. Yeah, you get no argument there. Good on you,
mate. And cars are getting sort of more powerful than they used to, with fuel injections to the carbs and retors and things, and things change.
Yeah,
and
when I passed my test, 0 to 60 was something that racing cars did, and now you can buy cars off the line that do that.
Yes.
Yes,
my son's just recently bought an Audi TT 225, the highest spec one, and it is fast.
Yeah. And congratulations on having rich kids, by the way. Always a good plan.
He's not rich. He's but he's quite sensible and saves up his money for
Excellent. He'll be looking after you. Another 20 years, he'll be looking after you, Neil. Go on anyway. Cars have changed. They've got better braking systems. They've also got faster and the like.
And people have got to sort of adapt to the change. How we sort of accomplish that is another matter that requires some thought. But it's, well, as I say, things change and we have to just keep up with
It is
the
interesting. I mean, I like the idea. I really do, of reminding people that things change. But I'll tell you something else that's changed, and I'm not altogether sure that this isn't part of it. I've heard this argument put. Now, I've no way of establishing it, but the psychology of being a motorist has changed. Now, I'll tell you why. In the past, if you were hit by another car, or if your car hit somebody else, you were surrounded by solid metal, and you got beat to pulp. Even if you ran in the back of somebody, your face was smashed into the wheel, and all of those sorts of things. And so, in an accident, you were going to get hurt. Cars now are so much better in survivability, if you like, cab protection, as they call it.
The passengers and drivers survive and the car doesn't.
And the car doesn't. The problem there is that you suddenly realise, hang on a minute, I'm in this, like when you go observing sharks underwater, you've got your scuba diver kit on, so you know you're in a strange place, but you're inside that cave. You're as safe, that cage, you're as safe as houses. And people in the driving cage are now under the impression that they are safe. So risks that they would not normally take, they now take with alacrity. So there is that. Cars have changed not just in terms of they go faster, and not even that the braking systems are better, but just survivability in the event of an accident is a lot higher, and people, if you like, psychologically relax. Sandy says your argument with Allan disregards the fact that this process has applied to motorcyclists for years. It is restricted both in terms of age and brake horsepower. This is a reference to Allan, who was suggesting that what we ought to do, I think it was Allan, who was suggesting that what we ought to do is say once you've passed your test, you then for some years are no longer allowed to, or will not be allowed to drive a high-powered vehicle for a certain time. And I said, well, how would you frame the legislation? Because he worked on a time basis. Well, 5 years not driving is no way to improve your driving conditions. Alan, the standard of driving in the UK, shocking. Live and drive a car in Spain, that's all I say. Brian in Costa Blanca. Brian, as you well know, I would risk it. And David in Sale, an ever-increasing number of drivers seem to be under the impression that cars are fitted with indicators so that other people can let them know when they are going. Also, a complete ignorance about how to approach and negotiate a roundabout seems to be sweeping the country. To be fair to them, though, it must be difficult to remember such basics whilst they're talking on their mobile. That's David in Sale, once more with feeling, sir. Dead easy. And Sean writes about the congestion charge. Your penultimate caller yesterday hit the nail on the head when he opined that if more and more people are forced onto public transport as a result of the congestion charge, travelling on the trams and buses will become even more of a nightmare than it is now. Try getting a seat on a bus or a tram now at the rush hours or on the tram at any time on a Saturday. I'm sure you would delight in the smell of the unwashed bodies, newspapers thrown all over the trams and buses, the sound of people telling everybody things they don't want to know on countless mobile phones, the deafening sound of music from other mobile phones, yobs smoking and drinking in the trams with no respect for regulations or anybody else. The smell of people eating various foodstuffs, standing and waiting on bitterly cold exposed tram stops or bus shelters because the scum have smashed all the glass yet again. Well, you're right in all of those things. We have got rather finicky, haven't we? We've got to the stage where, don't touch me, and I don't want to stand next to him because he smells. Well, quite a lot of the time, the thing that the bloke you stood next to, you're thinking stinks, actually smells of human beingness. And we've forgotten that, because we now think people should smell of lavender and other strange commodities. They don't. They should smell of human beingness. And we've all got rather finicky about such things and turned into bloody big jesses, to be honest. So I'm not bothered about people who, providing they wash, if they don't lather themselves up with some kind of chemical wee, then good luck to them, say I. The other thing is, of course, that if more people used public transport, it wouldn't get less safe, it would get more safe. By the way, Sir Howard Bernstein is clerk to the authority of the Greater Manchester Passenger Transport Authority, so he is their scribbler. So my apologies to Brian, but there you are, Sir Howard Bernstein is the clerk. Barbara in Denton.
Hello, Alan.
Hiya.
I went to the doctor's yesterday in Denton. I'm disabled. I was in the doctor's 10 minutes. We have a blue badge in the car. When we came out, we had a parking ticket.
Okay, and were you parked legally according...
Oh, yes, we were parked outside the doctor's.
Yeah, I know you were parked outside the doctor's. I'd work that out, but...
Sorry.
Were you parked legally?
Oh, I think so, yeah. We were parked there before.
What did it say on the ticket?
I couldn't tell you, actually. My husband read it. It was so incensed. He just threw it on the counter and I've not seen it since.
OK. Well, there could be a number of things. And you know this better than anybody, the blue badge does not entitle one to park anywhere.
Oh, no.
So there's that. It doesn't... I'm not saying you did this. It doesn't entitle you to park in some parking bays without paying.
No.
And also, there is a right and a wrong way to display the badge.
Well, I know that, because we did put it right.
Well, as I say, without knowing what it said,
No.
on the ticket, we can't know what you're accused of beyond in the mind of the issuer of the ticket. You shouldn't have been there.
Right.
So you need to look at the ticket and find out what you're accused of.
And I think we have to write and complain, say...
Well, I think, first of all, you need to find out what you're accused of.
Yeah.
There's no point writing and saying we never done it until we know what it is that they said you've done.
We're only there 10 minutes.
But 10 seconds is enough to break the law. I mean, I only shot him the once, Gov. He's still dead. Yeah, but I only shot him the once. Surely he allowed 2 shots. You know what I mean? So you need to look at the ticket and find out what you're accused of.
Right.
And if you didn't do what you're accused of, then write and tell them you didn't.
Yeah.
If you did do what you're accused of, then write and tell them that you'll be sending them some money.
OK, right.
All right, love.
Alan.
Good on you.
Bye.
0161 228 2255. The blue badge does not entitle you to park anywhere you feel like, when you feel like. It has restrictions. There are fewer than there are in other fora, but there are some. So it doesn't give you the right to park wherever you feel like. So read it, find out where you can and cannot park, obey it, and you will be better off than some of us. And in the case of Barbara, sounds like you might even be 60 quid better off. Alan, via text, Steve from Newtonley Willers. Do you know who would be consulted in a referendum? Residents within the area only, or those like me that have to work in the city centre? I don't know, Steve, but my guess is residents of the 10 local authorities. Now, that wouldn't apply to you in Newtonley Willows, because you have the misfortune to be Merseyside. The wisdom to work in Manchester, but not quite the wisdom to live within Greater Manchester. But if there was a referendum, my guess is it would be the individual voters within Greater Manchester. And if that meant that we voted on a congestion charge for our part of the world, and you outside didn't like it, then that'd be hard cheese. But if ever they introduce it in Liverpool, then you'd be entitled to vote in Liverpool, and all the Mancunians who travelled to Liverpool to work, well, they'd both be peed off. So that's it. So I'm afraid it would just be, almost certainly would just be, the people who reside and therefore are entitled to vote in this area. Now, Sir Howard Bernstein, there's so many bloody nights around here. Sir Howard Bernstein, when he was talking this morning to Eamon and Diane, and indeed to everybody else, but he was with Eamon and Diane, he said that they would consult with businesses as well. Now, how that would work on a congestion charge referendum, I don't know. Rochdale Council is the first to respond to our request for a reaction to Sir Richard Leese's congestion charge suggestion. The leader of Rochdale Council says it's not against the idea of a referendum outright, but it's not forthrightly in favour until the completion of public consultation and the publication of its findings. So they're saying at this point it's too soon to decide whether they want to support the concept of a referendum or not. Remember, Sir Richard Leese isn't just saying there will be a referendum. He's saying he would support the idea of a referendum if every one of the 10 councils, including his own, Manchester, was prepared to A, agree to the referendum, agree the terms of the question put in the referendum, but most importantly, agree to be bound by the outcome in either direction. Yea or nay, be bound by it. So there you are. He would support it. In other words, he is, there's no question, Sir Richard Leese is very, very, very much in favour of the congestion charge. But he's saying if there was a referendum in Greater Manchester and the people of Greater Manchester voted against it, he would drop it and look somewhere else. That has to be a deduction. We've spoken, as I say, we're asking, I'm sure you'll hear from Steve Saul on Manchester Now after 5 o'clock, but I'm sure we'll have more of the leaders of the other 9 and now the other 8 local authorities giving their view, even if it is we haven't made our mind up yet, which is fair enough because they've only just had it dropped upon them.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
As you've just heard, there's backing for a referendum on Greater Manchester's congestion charge proposals from the leader of Manchester City Council. But Sir Richard Leese says he'll only agree if all 10 councils in Greater Manchester also agree to be bound by its outcome. An independent investigation into the loss of 25 million child benefit records has blamed woefully inadequate procedures at the offices of Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs in Tyne and Wear. And a report on parliamentary expenses has recommended new limits on how much MPs can claim and a ban on using public money to furnish their second homes. Manchester's weather. Expect showers to die away later this afternoon, highs of 19 Celsius. I'm Mark Edwardson.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
Better news on the M62. Traffic's now returned to normal between 21 Mill Row and 22 Rushworth Moor. It was fairly built up for a short time not so long ago, but it does seem to have eased off now, thankfully. And if you're heading through West Orton on Wigan Road on the A58, temporary traffic lights are causing slight delays because of these roadworks that are underway on Wigan Road between Green Meadows and Southfield Drive. Hopefully they should be complete by around about 3:30 today. Don't forget, of course, if you can update me further, why not get in touch by calling hands-free 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester. Sports with Joanne Smith.
Well, news on England's one-dayer against New Zealand in a moment, but first it's been confirmed that Zimbabwe's cricketers will not tour England next season. The England and Wales Cricket Board have announced they're suspending all bilateral arrangements with Zimbabwe Cricket and are looking to find a replacement touring team for summer 2009. That decision comes with full support from the government and Prime Minister Gordon Brown.
We want to ensure that Zimbabwe does not tour England next year. And we will call for other countries to join us in banning Zimbabwe from the 2020 international tournament.
Meanwhile, the International Cricket Council will be discussing the situation next week. Well, on the field, Ravi Bopara has just been bowled out for 58 after steadying England's innings against New Zealand in the one-day international at the Oval. He made 75-run partnership with O.A. Shah, who's just got his 50. He's unbeaten on 50. England are now 202 for 5 after 40 overs. Well, there's better news for Lancashire. Andrew Flintoff is expected to bowl for the Lightning in the 2020 Cup match with Nottinghamshire at Old Trafford this evening. He's already made his first team comeback, but has yet to bowl since recovering from a side strain picked up 6 weeks ago. Lancs need to win their final 2 group games to qualify for the quarter-finals and be guaranteed a place, with cricket manager Mike Watkinson confident his players are aware of what's needed.
Everybody knows what particular job is expected of them, whether it be in the top 6, in the power play, when with ball in hand, you've got different tactics than in the middle when the field is spread. Now we're going Yorkers, slow balls, bumpers, whatever we're going. Everybody knows what the particular job is, and we've got a nice framework to the side now.
You can catch ball-by-ball commentary here from 6 p.m. and online at bbc.co.uk/Manchester. Great Britain's hopes in the women's draw at Wimbledon rest solely with Anne Chiathafon after Elena Baltasha was knocked out in the second round. She lost in straight sets 6-2, 7-5 to Ji Zheng of China. Elsewhere, third seed Novak Djokovic is 3-all in the first set with former world number one Marat Safin. Defending champion Roger Federer plays Robin Soderling in the third match on centre. Turkey face the prospect of having just 13 outfield players available for tonight's Euro 2008 semi-final against Germany. Coach Terim said he may have to field third-choice keeper Tolgin Zengin because of the injury crisis. Two of Manchester City's backroom staff have left the club as manager Mark Hughes reorganises his backroom staff. Reserve team coach Ian Miller and fitness and conditioning coach Stefano Marone has gone with immediate effect. Former Bury boss Chris Casper has been appointed youth team manager at Bradford City. Casper was sacked by the Shakers back in January after a poor run of results. In rugby league, Mick Hogan is the new chief executive at Wigan Warriors. He's part of the new management board at the JJB. And Oldham Ruffians winger Gareth Langley has been suspended for one game and fined £75 by the Rugby League Disciplinary Committee for a careless high tackle on Hunslet's Luke Rayner in June. He'll miss the top of the table North League 2 clash with Gateshead on Sunday.
Now listen, you don't come on here calling me names.
What did I call you?
Turkey face. I heard you say it. You said turkey face earlier.
Did I say turkey face?
You
Oh
did.
dear.
You go and read your script.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Alan.
I should hope you're out and all. I've just got the neck.
New drama on BBC One.
When I woke up, she was dead. The evidence is so strong. Then charge him. This is the most open and shut case that I've handled in a very long time. Nobody's going to stop wanting to kill you just because you say you're innocent. The stupid and the weak, they don't survive in here. Pretty sure you're going to remember things the way I'm telling it. I want to tell the truth. The truth can go to hell. I just want you all to listen.
From a lost night of passion to a living nightmare, this is Criminal Justice. Starting Monday night at 9 on BBC One.
Oh, I see. Right. When's Spooks coming back? Are we getting Spooks? Is that instead of Spooks? If it's instead of Spooks, it better be good. I know Spooks got really, really silly in the last one, but there's nothing wrong with really, really silly. It's drama. It's not a documentary, for crying out loud. It's meant to be silly. Look at that Doctor Who. Do you think the bloody Daleks really exist? There's nothing wrong with silly. Stephen in Marple. Hiya.
Can you hear me?
Not very well. Have another go.
Hiya, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I did then.
It just comes back to your point you made earlier that if the question is do people want to pay to travel on the road, we know, but if the people want a better transport system, I think you'll find most of the answer yes.
But that won't be the question. The question will be, do you want to pay for a better transport system so that you can travel in your car?
Oh, exactly.
Now, what would the answer be then?
The answer would be I want to live in a city that's got a 21st century transport system. And if the only way
I suggest you go and live in Bordeaux.
Well...
I'm sorry, that was just me being cruel. Go on.
Well, people go abroad on holiday and they come back and they say how wonderful transport systems are abroad. But then in England, we're not willing to pay for it, so you can't have the system out.
But yes, but if you go, I mean, I was in Bordeaux just the back end of last year, and they've built a brand new, almost silent tram system where it integrates with the normal road, and passengers have to dodge out the way and all sorts of things, and yet it really works. But there's no congestion charge. I've just been to New York earlier this year. They've got a fantastic metro system, or the subway as they call it. The roads are very, very simple to understand if a little busy. The public of New York State, as it were, have just turned down in a referendum the congestion charge. They just said no to it. So the city is jam-packed full, but the public transport system's absolutely fine on Manhattan Island. So people say, yes, we've got a great public transport system, or we want a great public transport system, but are left with the question, why should the motorist pay for it?
I agree with that. It's just that
How else is it going to be funded? That's the
taxation. The same way it's funded in every other city in the world. Somebody has to spend taxpayers' money on it and decide it's a good idea.
But if that was the case, then you get people complaining about tax going up, wouldn't you? So this is, in a way, a tax.
Just cancel the odd war.
I suppose you could do that.
Cancel the odd war, cut the expenses of MPs, you get a bloody tram each.
Oh, yeah. But I live where I live in Marple Bridge. I get the train into work every day, so it's dead easy. So it wouldn't actually affect me. But I'm just, on the whole, I'm just supportive of a better system. Now, my wife would have to pay to travel. I wouldn't, but.
But do you think that's acceptable? I don't know your wife's circumstances, but let's go with a £5 a week at today's prices, a £5 a day at today's prices. That's £25 a week. That's £100 a year. Take off your holidays, you're looking at £1,000 a year that she's going to be paying to improve or to provide the facility for someone to have a journey as easy as yours.
I suppose now you put it that way, it's a good point. It's just if you asked her whether that would make a journey to work easier each day, I suppose she'd probably say yeah, because at the moment it takes about an hour to just get to travel 13 miles.
And would she spend £1,000?
Well, it'd be my money anyway, so she probably would spend it.
If she's going to work, I don't think it's just your money, Stephen, but you fight that one at home, mate. Have a good day.
I think, thank you, bye.
Cheers. 0161 228 2255. Paul in Stockport. Hiya, Paul.
Hello, Alan. How you doing, mate?
Not bad.
Fellow. Oh, one's got it. Right, what it is, I had to go to the American Embassy in London to take my daughter to get a visa because she's going over there to play football.
Yeah.
So I said to her, right, we'll leave early. So what the journey was, I went up the toll road. I paid £6 to go through the toll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's three each way, isn't it? That.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I came back on the old rough road on the way back.
Oh right. Oh, is it £6? Go on then. You went £6. I didn't know it was £6.
Yeah.
Go on anyway.
Went in the van, you see. I go in the van.
Right. Now I understand.
Right, so anyway, I said to my daughters, I'm going to pay this congestion charge when I get to London because I'm not messing about. I want to get in and get out because I can't stand the place as it is. So I got to the embassy, and you can actually park quite close to the embassy, but that was £4 an hour. So I says, all right. I asked the copper how long it's going to be, so it's going to be about 2 hours in there. So I put me £4 in, and that cost me £8, right? So I said to my daughters, when we've done right, says, right, what we'll do on the way out, we'll go down the Edgware Road and we'll pay the congestion charge so it's all done and dusted and get off home. So we're driving down the road and we see there's loads of shops there and they've got a big C on them. I says, right, I said to my daughters, right, is there any double yellow lines? She says, no. Is there anything saying that I can't park here? And there was nothing at all. So I said, right, I just pulled up on a path straight in the shop. I was in the shop 3 minutes. I said to the chap, says, how much is this congestion charge? He says, it's £8. So he took my registration, tapped it all in. I said, there you go, give me £8. He gave me a receipt saying everything's fine. I said, right, got in the van, straight home to Manchester. That'll do for me. Now, a week later, I got a bill on me desk for £120. And I couldn't understand what it was for. And what it was for parking 2 wheels on the path on the Edgware Road. So I thought, oh, well, that's the highway code. I took it on the chin. And it was £120, but if you pay £60 beforehand, that's all it'll cost you. So I took that on the chin. So I told my daughter all about it. And says, how did they find you, Dad? How did they spot you? She says, well, down the Edgware Road, there's cameras, and they spot all the vehicles if they're parked illegally and all the rest of it. And that's how they get you. I says, well, when this new congestion charge comes to Manchester, it's going to be the same here, all the way up, near to Manchester. There's going to be cameras everywhere. Yeah. If you're parked illegally, they're going to wallop you.
You may well, yes.
So my daughter was dead excited about it. She says, when you come home, says, can I have a look at the picture? Because I was sat in the van. Was it a nice picture of me? So I said, no.
That's a daughter for you, isn't it?
You little brat. Glad to get it shut of her. Yeah. So anyway, all right, I took it on the chin. I thought, right, I parked on the path. And I thought to myself, Christ, I've just been fined here for paying my congestion charge. I thought, no, nice one. But what really got me was on the Saturday, I always buy the Manchester Evening News. Now, on page 3 of about 2 weeks ago on Manchester Evening News, there was a famous footballer from Manchester United, and he was parked in Alderley Edge going to get his hair cut. And his Bentley was parked 2 wheels on the path on double yellow lines, parking the opposite direction. and nothing has been done about that guy for parking like that.
I remember that story, and I, like you...
I'm not naming the person because
no,
it's
you
not
don't
fair.
have to, but if that had been you, if that had been me, we'd have been writing a cheque.
Yeah.
If you're a multi-millionaire footballer, then you can afford the cheque, but you won't need to.
That's it.
It sucks. I'm with
But
you.
the thing is,
it
though,
absolutely sucks.
The thing is, it shouldn't be like that because I've had my van photographed by the London, right, for parking on the path. Fair enough. We've got evidence of this person parked, and we've got a lot of evidence because it's printed in every Manchester Evening newspaper throughout Manchester. All we've got to do is send that to the Mayor of London and say, hey, what about him? Can I have my 60 quid back? But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut it out.
Well, I suggest you write to the footballer and say, come on, you got off with that. I got done in similar circumstances.
Yeah.
Let's go halves. You give me 30 quid, everyone's happy.
I can't see him doing that because I'm a City fan.
I don't...
He's a United fan.
Well, he won't
He's a
know.
United player.
He won't know. They don't have any way of knowing who you support. Good on you, mate.
Well, he will be, because if I get it off him, I'll tell him.
All right.
So watch out for when all these cameras start coming up in Manchester, mate. It's going to be, all right, if you're a terrorist, you'll get caught, but if you're a motorist, you'll get hit.
All right. Good on you, mate. I don't think you'll get the money back off Boris Johnson, though, so give it a try by all means, but I think you need to come to terms with the fact that you ain't getting it back off him, because I've heard he's as tight as a duck's bum. Yeah, 25 quid a week, that's 100 a year. What did I say? What did I say? What have I told you about your mathematics? No, it's not. 25 quid a week is £100 a month. Here I am again, he says, 25 quid a week is £100 a month. And that's more or less £1,000 a year. That's what I said. Well, if I didn't, I certainly said £100 a month. And I think I said 1,000 quid. Anyway, there you go. Do try to keep up, Terry. I don't mind being pulled up, but I tend to prefer it when I'm wrong. Yeah. It does happen. Yeah, I know. I sometimes feign inaccuracy just to prove I'm not perfect, when in truth I am. Keith in Oldham. Hiya.
Hi, Alan. I want to raise a point about this. I know I'm probably sick of talking about it now.
I'm never sick of talking for any reason, but go on.
This congestion business.
Yep.
I listened to the early programme with the...
Mr Howard, yeah, go on.
And he was mentioning that they're going to use a combination of the number plate recognition and possibly transponders in the cars.
Correct.
Well, if they're going to use the number plate recognition, I mean, I don't agree with all this, but I mean, if it does go through as it seems to be doing, why should I have to fit a transponder in my car where they can track me anywhere in the country using that transponder?
Well,
whereas when I go through the number plate recognition, they're only going to ping me for where I've been.
They won't, you won't have to have one fitted, but it will be for your convenience. So what they'll say is, they have them... When you approach the toll roads in France, there are 3 types of lane. There's dozens and dozens of lanes, but I'm talking about their equivalent of the motorway.
Yeah.
And you approach, and there are 3 kinds of turnstile, if you like. One is cash, one is credit card, and the other one is a system whereby the vehicle has a little gadget on it, and as it drives through, it records it, that it's driven through, and a bill is sent to the owner of the vehicle.
Got you.
So they don't have to have them, but if they don't have them, they've got to use one of the other 2 methods, which is a little more cumbersome. That's all. They have them on the bridges in New York. They have them in Germany, I think, as well. And I think on the toll road on the M40... You know, it's not the M40, it's the M6, but it's the one that goes on to be the M40 later. But I think on that toll road, I'm not entirely certain, but I think you can buy a pass there. And again, your vehicle has a little gadget on it. So it won't be compulsory. I suspect it'll be voluntary to save you all the mither. A bit like the ticket you buy to rove on public transport. You buy it and it lets you go on the public transport whenever you like. A bit like the commuters who travel in and out of London pay a couple of £1,000s a year for a commuter ticket, which is effectively a pass to travel at any time.
Yeah.
Season tickets, they call them, don't they?
Yeah.
So it'll be like that. It'll be an electronic season ticket.
Well, let's hope it isn't going to be compulsory that we all have to have them, because the ramifications of that for privacy issues are going to be... And I'm dead nuts about all this, you know.
Well, it won't matter soon, because they'll just attach it to your ID card, because this government's hell-bent on getting them. I don't just say that out of a vacuum. Just listen to this. People, this has just come out today, people will have to be vetted and licensed to sponsor family members to visit from abroad. Sponsors who fail to ensure their visitors leave before the visa runs out will face a possible jail sentence of up to 14 years and a fine of $5,000, blah, blah, blah. These changes will require legislation. And then this. The sponsor licences will be linked to the rollout for the National Identity Card Scheme for British citizens and for foreign nationals. So there you are, yet another reason that the government is saying we need an identity card, when in truth the only reason is so that those swines know where we are. And frankly, I don't think the government should have any more powers. I don't. I trust the politicians more than I trust the administrators of the system, because they're already proving themselves to be incompetent, irrational and greedy for power. I know that feeling. See you tomorrow. Have a good day. Ta-da.
What's the connection between George Best and Nate?